Hello, and welcome to Discovering True Health, your weekly deep dive into health and wellness. Thank you so much for joining us today. Before we get started with today's show, please hit that subscribe button. It helps us out a lot and supports the show. And you'll stay up to date on all our upcoming shows. You can also check out a lot more additional information on our website, Instagram, and Facebook. All those links are below. So today we're going to be learning about plant medicine and how it can help us heal trauma and assist in our own personal transformation. Now, one of the plant medicines we'll be specifically talking about is ayahuasca. It's been used for thousands of years by the South American indigenous people and has significant religious and medicinal benefits in their culture. So my guest today is Michael Thornhill. Michael and his wife run a retreat center in Peru for healing and evolution called Casa Galactica. And they work there with plant medicines, alternative healing modalities, and their innate connection with spirit to help heal and awaken their guests to the very truth of who they are. And Michael is also a professional channel and trauma-informed multidimensional healer. So thank you so much for joining me today, Michael. I'm really excited to have this conversation.
Christy, thank you so much for having me. An absolute pleasure to be here with all you listeners. Thanks so much for tuning in. Appreciate it.
Yes. And now your journey has led you to study and work with indigenous tribes in the Amazon River Basin called the Shipibo. And their culture is very deeply rooted in spirituality and the emphasis on plant spirit shamanism. So can you share with us an overview of the teachings of the Shipibo that you work with, and what led you to work with the Shipibo? What was kind of the catalyst in your life that led you to do this deep healing work with plant medicine and shamanic work?
Yeah, well, thanks so much for that introduction and the beginning question. So a lot of the deep work that myself and Jamie, my wife and co-founder, have done have been rooted in the foundations of the Shipibo language and in some aspects the tradition. We find ourselves now at Casa Galactica have transformed and moved away from some of the levels and lineages of those teachings, which on some level are not really in alignment with the level of trauma-informed care and unconditional love and compassion that we are working with here at Casa Galactica as part of the transition from third to fourth entity. Yet at the same time, it's been a great foundation for us to work because these traditions, these traditions and our teachers, these lineages have been passed down for thousands of years, where the learning of how to make the ayahuasca, combining the ayahuasca and the chacruna vine, the language of the Shipibos, which within it contains many different transmissions and in many senses is the language of the plants. And we've had a great foundation and training within that core lineage of the Shipibo lineage, Noyorao lineage of the Shipibo tradition to be specific. But yet now we find that we are building our own path out of the foundations of what we've learned from the Shipibo tradition, which then incorporates non-dual teachings, trauma-informed care, very much the empowerment teachings that come through us, which is teaching everyone that you're already free, that everything you need is already here, and that communicating with plant spirits, that you don't need a shaman, you don't need a teacher. In fact, you can connect with all of these things within your own consciousness. So what we're really here to do is kind of break the stigma between the fact that you need to go to someone to get that help. So all the work that we do is about bringing it back home to you're your own healer. And that's kind of where we start to kind of break away from some of the traditions, which are sometimes based a little bit more in duality. And there's many great lessons to have that here. But as we're kind of going through this really amazing change into the golden age of Aquarius and moving through in this transition, right here, it's now for everyone listening back at home, just to realize, okay, I'm my own healer. I can do this. I have everything I need here right now. So that's kind of where we build upon the technologies of the plant spirit healing tradition. So we hold our ceremonies using the Shipibo language, which are sing Icaros or healing songs, and they shamanically hold the space and connect and communicate with spirit. It's a language of the plants, language of spirit. But then beyond that is kind of all the aforementioned things that we kind of incorporate, that if you looked at that from and compared to a Shipibo ceremony, where we've worked in many of these over the last 5 years plus, it's where you'd start to see that it's quite different in that sense. So not better or worse, just different. And this is what we're about. And why did I go to the Amazon rainforest and study with the Shipibos? Firstly, the lineage of the ayahuasca healers within the Shipibo tradition, there is a unbroken lineage of plant spirit knowledge, metaphysical knowledge that's passed down from generation to generation, that's been lost within the Western world for the most part. In many different tribes are no longer prevalent. Many different teachings have been lost. Many different shamanic leaders have been killed or ostracized in many different ways. So here in the Amazon rainforest, to connect to the technology, to the medicine, to the teaching, where plants are recognized as doctors, as multidimensional beings, this is what a part of that lineage is. And this is the foundation which we carry forth through all of our teachings at Casa Galactica, that plants are multidimensional doctors here to help us heal and evolve. Now, just to make another kind of differentiation that can kind of, in our experience, it seems like a distortion from the truth of what things are. In some of these more ancient plant spirit healing traditions, it seems to us from our experience that many human traits like jealousy and other things like that are projected onto plants. So a lot of human traits are kind of distorted into tradition. So what we've done in our experience, as humbly and as best we can, is connect to the truth of those teachings, which in our experience starts melding into the non-dual realms, starts melding into the empowerment teachings, and starts to dissolve some of the trauma from third density earth, which inevitably is present within any human translated tradition, whether this be the Bible, whether this be Buddhism, whether this be the scriptures. That human translation, and again, and I'm going to include us in this, on some level, we're translating what our truth is. There's distortions within that. So this is why all the work that we do at Casa Galactica is not for you to follow our teachings. It's for you to learn to trust yourself and connect to the truth of who you are and how that manifests directly for you. So this is where the breaking free from those traditions come forth. Yet the technology, the lineage, the holding of the ceremony in that shamanic way, to be able to learn that in the depths of duality, is an absolutely empowering process that we've gone through, what we continue to study and learn in our own ways, and meld all of these different kind of experiences together. So I'm just going to take a pause there, because I'm not sure if I answered the question fully, but that to come through.
No, you gave me goosebumps. I was like, oh, I mean, there's so many things packed into what you said. And I love how you explained, this, it reminded me of history with religion, how you're talking about the evolution of what you're doing, how, back hundreds of years ago with religion, we had to go to the church and we had to go through the church. And it's kind of that evolution of, in the same way with spirituality, it's like what you just said. No, we can heal ourselves. We don't have to go through, this specific constructed, man-made kind of, even though it's a spiritual structure, which is absolutely amazing. And can you explain a little bit, because I know this is like a word that's used that maybe a lot of people don't understand. You talk about plants being multidimensional. Can you explain a brief little description of what that means?
Yes. So you could look at, if you looked at a flat piece of paper and you were drawing a picture on the piece of paper, you would know that to be a two-dimensional picture. And then if you picked up an object like my phone here, and then you would say, oh, okay, this is a three-dimensional picture. So, and you look at the plant behind me and you can say, this plant here, okay, we can see that this is a three-dimensional plant, and I'm touching the leaves here. I love this plant, by the way. So yeah. This is a way that you can kind of see, okay, this is great here. But then what else is present within this plant? What else? This plant has a spirit. This plant has an energy. It has a vibration which is not in the science textbooks, at least not the traditional ones. You start looking at Stephen Booner and things like this, and it's being talked about more and more. But when we talk about multidimensional, it's like what's beyond the drawing on the page, what's beyond what I can see with my eye. Now, I've talked about this as being plant doctors, and this is what I'm very grateful for the teachings within the Shipibo tradition that we've learned in, is that plants are viewed as doctors. Now, you can look at this in multi-dimensional ways. The plant has alkaloids. So anyone who's taken a herb or a medicine can recognize, okay, there's a herb in this plant that's beneficial for cholesterol, and I take it and it lowers my cholesterol, it alters the biochemistry of my body, and I have a perceived benefit. And this is great. Now, what is not taken into consideration is that there is a spirit and energy which is present, which is also your auric field, your mental and your emotional body. This is why when pharmaceutical companies isolate different compounds or alkaloids, and then they create a prescription medication, which in many cases can still be beneficial, it does not harness the spirit, because you cannot take the spirit of that plant and synthetically create it. Even to the essence, when you start separating out bits and parts of plants, you also start to lose some of that essence. Now, how we can communicate and really potentiate the work with the spiritual aspects of plants is firstly acknowledging that it exists. Now, not taking my words for it, I'm not here to tell you that this exists. It's for your own inquiry. Is the plant in my own living room? Is there a life force energy that's present in this, that when I sing to it, that when I speak to it, when I blow on it, when I tend it and move it towards its sun, it becomes happy, it becomes vibrant? Can I tangibly acknowledge that? So thus and therefore, when you start taking different plant medicines, herbs, and supplements, you are then acknowledging that you're not only taking a physical compound, you're then connecting with the spirit of this plant. And through the communion of that spirit, then magical, mysterious transformation can occur within the mind, body, and spirit. So it's starting to take into account all of these different aspects. Just like you and I here are communicating on some level in the 3D, there's also a level of connection on the soul level, on the higher self level, that's also creating this conversation. The reason that we've actually connected to be able to have this podcast, just like many family members or people that you know, some people you meet with, and you recognize there's some other level of connection of why you meet with people that's beyond just you bumping into someone in the street on a third level, on a third density level. So then we start to acknowledge all of these different things. And when we start to acknowledge this within the plant, when we start to acknowledge this within ourselves, we start to acknowledge the truth of who we are. And when we can recognize ourselves as infinitely loving, unconditionally loving, infinite magical beings, then we can start to live from that place. And that's why we are a multidimensional center for healing and evolution.
That was absolutely incredible. It made me think of a study that I heard. It was like a simple study where I think it was like a child doing a science experiment for school, and one plant they gave loving words to, and the other plant they said hateful things to, and the plant they said hateful things to died. So yeah, I mean, it definitely goes beyond, and there's so many other levels that we can't see.
Just briefly on that, Chrissy, I love that you're bringing that up. Just inviting everyone just to recognize if that happens to plants, how many things were we told growing up as a kid? You're not good enough. You're not good looking enough. You're not clever enough. You're not sporty enough. You're not intelligent enough. All these different types of things. Just like that plant doesn't grow in the way that it's its full potential. Part of the healing of inner child trauma and the healing of trauma is going back to that time where those, I would say on some level, spells have been cast against us that really cause us to believe something that's not true. It creates an illusion, a disillusion about the truth of who we are, which, because we don't know any better, because we're an infinite, because we're born into separation beyond the veil of illusion, or through the veil of illusion, we believe those things and we live those places, just like a plant in a pot that can never fully grow into its full potential because it's limited. So it's about us breaking those limitations that have been put through to us, recognizing that those limitations it's only our belief in those limitations that can keep us limited. It's not actually our limitations. It's our belief that someone said something. If someone says that to us because we're wounded, because we're traumatized, because we don't believe in ourselves, when we identify with those things that people have said about us, we cause constriction, we cause suffering. But now is this, I just keep saying, I just feel it. And I speak about this a lot recently, just this shift in the transformation that's happening now, this momentum that we've got on earth, even though it's troubling, even though it's challenging, even though that there's all of these symptoms of separation are popping up in drastic and terrible ways. Beyond that, I really feel that seed of hope is that being planted, that we're really growing beyond all those limitations. And what we're actually seeing on the earth is these things that are coming up that seem like it's going the other way, seem like things are getting worse and worse. It's actually us seeing the limitations, those negative beliefs up front. But what the exciting thing is, what I truly believe is that we're breaking through them. And on the other side of that, beyond the other side of the glass ceiling, there's our limitless potential that we're beginning to embody and believe in and share with each other.
Oh, yes, so powerful. We're crumbling the old to, it's kind of like that butterfly going into the cocoon and, breaking free. It seems like it might be dead in that cocoon and it's not moving, but then it breaks free and it turns into a butterfly. But yeah, oh, that's so beautiful. You mentioned another term when you were speaking earlier. I think it was the jewels realms or beyond the jewels realms.
Yes.
Kind of expound on that.
Yes. So I'm talking about non-dual realms.
Non-dual.
So dual as in two. So non-dual, another way of
Dual. Got it.
non-dual would be being one. In other words, that everything is one consciousness. So through conscious expansion, through spiritual practice, through ayahuasca, through plant medicine, through non-dual teachings and the empowerment teachings that come through us and many other non-dual teachers, it's the recognition of that one consciousness, that infinite consciousness that binds us all together, that is the very nature of our own being. And that you and I sitting here, seeing the computer screen, seeing the room around us, seeing each other as separate is actually an illusion. So it's them moving beyond that illusion to connect to the infinite one creation and recognizing that that is the truth of who we are. And rather than living then from the belief in the limited human mind and being, recognizing oneself as that infinite creator with limitless capacity, and then beginning to live from that place and share the vibration from that place, rather than being trapped in this idea that I'm alone, that I'm separate, that I'm suffering. Recognize the truth within that. So this is, in my experience, in our experience, through connecting to oneself as the infinite creator and creation, recognizing oneself as that divine spirit within that non-dual realm, that unconditional love, that recognition heals all wounds. And that's powerful about recognizing that you don't need anything or anyone to teach you about this. It just is.
Wow. That is powerful. And these plants can help us. Now, I love how you brought up, kind of the macro level of how things appear to be, there's crumbling and they might appear to be, all these intensities are happening. And, but this can also happen on a micro level in our own personal lives. And you went through this kind of spiritual transition. I've kind of been, going through mine as well. And I'm sure many listening could be in the midst of the same. And it can be scary and feel lonely and feel like this crumbling of the old to make room for the new. And it kind of can feel like a free fall sometimes. We're not sure when the net's going to appear. Can you share with us what that transition looked like and felt like for you? And what would be some kind of advice and wisdom that would be helpful for those currently going through their own kind of crumbling of the old or spiritual transformation?
Yeah, it's an interesting analogy that wants to come through. So the first thing is that perhaps you're watching like this epic movie, or maybe it's not an epic movie. Maybe the whole series is an epic movie, but you're watching a movie and it's kind of like a sad story. It's kind of like a heartbreak movie, and it's kind of everything's going wrong. You're kind of like the lead character in it, and everything's going wrong. You lost a job, you lost a relationship, you don't really know what to do, finance is not working. And everyone's kind of seen those movies where the movie starts and it's all going kind of down like this. Now, the interesting thing is there's so many prequels to that movie. There's so many other lifetimes, there's so many other things that are at play that you're kind of just joining the saga at like a midway point, but viewing it like it's the start. So the first thing to recognize and invitation is to let go about the idea that you actually know anything about what's going on. Let go of the idea that you actually know why or what or how anything is happening for you, because you planned this lifetime on some level, in some context, before you incarnated. Therefore, there are certain events, circumstances, situations, relationships within your life that have certain themes within them that are helping you to transform blockages, ancestral karma, ancestral trauma, karmic trauma that are coming in. And through experiencing and moving through these things, it's way more than just this one lifetime. It's way more than this one lifetime. So I'm just going to speak to it, and I'm just going to kind of speak quite frankly to it with absolute love and compassion in my heart, because I've been there deep in the victim mentality. I've been deep in the victim mentality of, why is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this? Why can't I transform? Why can't I shift? And the recognition is to know that the empowering part is that you're healing deep levels of trauma, healing multidimensional timelines, and you're coming into the recognition of the truth of who you are. So you can imagine I'm seeing this like kind of like almost like a space station, where there's kind of like a atmosphere here that has this layer of trauma in. And this is actually from many different lifetimes within separation, within third density, within planet Earth, and other lifetimes in other places. And what's actually happening is that we're breaking through that experience. It's kind of like we're going off the kind of karmic wheel that's been going round and round and round, and we're actually going onto a new game board. So the game board is completely shifting and changing. Now, this is where the non-dual teachings come back in and important, to give you the conviction, to recognize the conviction through this process. Because if we see ourselves as a limited human being incarnating, just as I had in this lifetime, through violent ritual sexual abuse, having a traumatic childhood, then there's this idea that comes up, and I'm just going to speak to it, because a lot of us say this: well, if there was a God, then why is there so much suffering? Or if there was a good, why is all this trauma, and why is all this difficulty here? So in my own lifetimes, there's this recognition that there's been so many different lifetimes in separation, in perpetration, in war, in violence, and all these other things. Not that that's good or bad. It's just that how can you know what you prefer if you don't know what you don't like? So it's just like if you go to a restaurant and you try something on the menu and you recognize, I don't like that, I prefer this. Or if you just say, when someone's going into shopping and you want to put like two dresses on, or two different color schemes for the wall of the house, you put one next to the other and you're like, I can see that I definitely prefer this one's next to the other. So we have all of these different incarnational experiences that we can have as contrasting experiences going deep into separation. And now what we're experiencing, what I'm personally experiencing, is a transformation of all these different levels and layers of separation, and choosing service to others in a way that's so powerful that transforms all of those lifetimes of suffering. And here's the kicker that we didn't know in all these other lifetimes. We could have always chosen it. We could have always stepped out the door. We just didn't know. And this is where it comes into the work that we offer at Casa Galactica, is for dedicated inner truth seekers. And that really means that you need to be, or one who connects with us is more than likely to be, a dedicated inner truth seeker. One who looks beyond the 3D plant, one who looks beyond what's on the piece of paper, one that looks beyond what's appearing to meet the eyes in this one lifetime, and recognizing that the playing field that we're on is much more grand than anything that we could even imagine. And becoming lost within the identity of the physical harm, the suffering, whatever one might experience in here, there's so much more that's at play. The invitation is to surrender to the truth of who you are, surrender to the path of your life, and illuminate that path so that you can transcend and transform all identity and separation, and come home to that truth of who you are as a one infinite creator.
Oh, so powerful. Yeah, I love how you explain that, because I've thought that often lately. I mean, I'm a big animal lover, so a couple times last year there were big storms, and these little baby birds fell out of their nests, and I would, try to save them, and a couple of them didn't make it. And I would think, okay, so why would God let the little baby bird suffer? Why would God, but the way you explain that to, for us humans, I mean, it's really, like you said, understanding what we prefer, because that's kind of is one of the reasons why we're here, is to understand, to have the experience and understand more who we are. So to have these contrasts, like you said, I mean, that's powerful to kind of understand it from that point of view. And you've also personally had a very, I've listened to your story, and you've overcome a lot, and you've had a lot of, stuff in your past that you're working on as well. And, it's such a powerful way to see it and to kind of make sense of it all.
Well, thank you for sharing that. For me, in my own personal experience, I feel like to many degrees and levels that I for the first time in a long time, I don't feel negative about the things that have happened to me. I don't really feel like this idea that I'm identified with someone who's been victimized, and that someone who, because I'm an infinite being, and the fact that I'm experiencing that means that I must want to experience this on some level. And for me, my understanding of my own life, of the healing of the trauma and the transformation, it's an absolute catalytic way for me to transform and to step into service and to help others through the experience of similar traumas, and then also heal my own karmic debt, karmic trauma as well. So it's just if you just the isness of it, it just is. Yes. It just is. There's nothing, and honestly, there's nothing that's ever really happened to me. It's just the identity, the projection of me as a human being that's experienced something, who's experienced this separation. But we've never left the infinite creation. We're just dreaming here through this life. Just that when you wake up from a dream after a sleep, and you've perhaps had a nightmare, or perhaps you've had an ecstatic dream, those things have never really touched the you, which is awaking from the bed. Now, in my understanding, through direct experience, that as we pass from this life, from this body, we awaken from the dream of the human experience, and nothing has ever touched us. So nothing can ever truly harm us. Now, just grounding it back down to anyone who's listening, it's absolutely fine to be feeling sorry for yourself. It's absolutely fine to be in the depths of the trauma. It's absolutely fine to be hating the universe and God and thinking, why am I here, and all that stuff. I've been through the whole thing. The reason I share this is not to make that bad, is just to let you know that there is hope, that you can move through that and genuinely move to a point where the trauma and experiences in your life will not define you. They're just a part of the evolution. And when you can see that without judgment, when you can see that without a label or an emotional attachment to that, that's where the freedom comes. It doesn't need to be next week, doesn't need to be when all these, I've not healed 100% of all the wounds, but that I'm able to connect to the sense of freedom because I know that I am already free. I know I don't need to do all this healing work to be free. It's the recognition that I'm already free that allows me to live from that place. Yeah. I'm not saying that I've got it perfect all the time by any means. I'm not saying that I recognize my freedom all the time. You ask my wife, I definitely don't have it. I'm not always free all the time, but like right now I'm feeling pretty good. And this is kind of just the recognition that the ups and downs, the peaks and the valley, it's fine. It's okay to experience contraction. It's okay to experience expansion. It's just the non-attachment to any of those states, and trusting that as the river flows back to the ocean, it will meander in whichever way the water wishes to go.
Right. And it's this powerful idea that you touched on too, of if you didn't go through those horrific traumas and those types of traumas, you wouldn't understand trauma-informed healing. You wouldn't be able to help other people through theirs. So it's this experience that comes full circle when you do the work, that you can actually now assist others because of your experience. And I mean, I think that's another just a beautiful aspect to it all.
Well, thanks for sharing that.
Now let's get a good understanding of plant medicine, specifically ayahuasca. I have never personally tried ayahuasca. It's come into my life for quite a few years now. I've had a lot of friends that have gone through the journey. And it's always fascinated me. I've definitely, we've talked about on other shows. We did a show on, microdosing and mushrooms. And I've specifically personally done mushrooms, and they've helped me tremendously with my PTSD and panic attacks and depression. So let's get into ayahuasca, because it's such an amazing medicine. And can you kind of describe first, for those that don't know, what ayahuasca is, a bit of its history, what an ayahuasca kind of journey and healing entails, how it can help heal trauma and addiction, as well as kind of how it affects our bodies physiologically?
Yeah, beautiful question. And just really thoroughly enjoying this conversation, Christy. Thanks so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to talk more about ayahuasca. And I'll talk about it again from the non-dual perspective of the way that we work. So just if you went to a yoga studio, there's many different ways that yoga is taught. There's many different ways that yoga is shared, and one is not better than the other. So we speak about this from our perspective, and just be aware that when you go to a retreat center, just be aware in the way that they work, because it's not always the same. And really do your research about if this place is able to be a space that can hold you for any trauma that may arise, that has trauma-informed care, that is able to guide you through this experience in an empowering way, rather than packing on more layers of limitation which match up against the trauma, which basically says, I'm not good enough, or I need to do these things to pass these tests to be worthy of my healing. These types of things. There's many different ways that you can get caught in these traps and these circles. And this is not exclusive to ayahuasca. You can experience this and you can hear this when people go to gurus, or people go to different places, or religion, or the church, or a cult of some kind, or whatever it is. So the recognition here is, and how we work with ayahuasca is a tool for transformation to help you connect to the truth of who you are. That is its foremost purpose here, is to help you transform, heal, and evolve, and connect to the truth of who you are. So everything that we do within our 10-day ayahuasca healing and evolution retreats here in Peru, at our center, we frame that ayahuasca and the other plant medicines that we work with, many of them which are non-psychoactive, which are here to clean the mind, body, and spirit, are tools for you to see yourself more clearly. Tools for you to recognize yourself as that one infinite creator and creation. Now, this analogy is coming through, and this is really interesting. So say if you've lost something in your house, and then you're looking around on the floor for something, and say you've lost a little needle or something like a sewing needle or something, and you're looking around for that needle, and you're searching and you're searching and you're searching and you're searching, and then you're looking for this needle. Maybe you find it, maybe you don't. But what you don't see is this amazing tapestry of a carpet and rug that's multidimensional, and it's just the most beautiful thing that you've ever seen, because you're so narrow focused on, I've got to find this needle. I've got to find this needle. So what we're here in this analogy doing is recognizing that you're the infinite tapestry of life, and connecting to that direct to source, rather than getting distracted along the way on your journey there. Just like, for instance, if you go out on the weekend and you need to grab some almond milk, some cereal, some eggs, and you need to get some kitchen towels and other things like this. And then you kind of go through the shop, and then you're just like, oh, wow, look at this. Oh my gosh, they've got these awesome organic incenses here. I really want to go in this shop here. And then, oh, I just saw a friend on the way, and this is what I really want to go over here. And then I go over here, and you maybe get distracted from the intention of this. Now, again, nothing wrong with going to all these other places and enjoying things, but the context which we really want to do is to be a catalyst to help you heal and evolve, which is take you direct to that recognition of yourself as the infinite creator. That's the background. That's the platform. That's what the ultimate truth is. And that's for you to discover. These words which are being shared will only ever point you to that. And the ayahuasca experiences themselves will give you glimpses and help you to embody that further and further with the integration work that we do, with the channel teachings, with the one-on-one workshops. We work with people in just 4-person size groups. So we work very, very intimately with people. Now, let's go into that. Now you can kind of understand the setting which we work in, which is to help you activate your intuition, empower your healing, and embody your truth. We do a whole host of online sessions that do this as well, but now we're going to talk about how ayahuasca specifically, as one tool within our 10-day retreats, works with this. Ayahuasca is an Amazonian brew mixed with another plant called chacruna. This is the purest form of the ayahuasca medicine. There are many different analogs, other ways of doing this, which are not necessarily as safe and not as pure in the sense of the way that we work. This is traditionally the safest way to work with ayahuasca. And we work with a trusted source from the jungle who we get all of our medicine from. Very beautiful, lots of love, very strong. And really what this medicine does, as you're going into this recognition of the truth of who you are, there's two sides to that coin. You can go straight into the recognition of the tapestry of life, that kind of beyond the needle in terms of what was falling on the floor. And you can recognize yourself as the tapestry of life, be connected to multidimensional beings, infinite consciousness, recognize the truth of who you are, see multidimensional lifetimes, recognize that you're already healed, recognize you're already free, and you can have this transcendental experience. That can be one way that you can experience that. Now, you may not experience that often. It may take you some period of time to recognize that, but that is ultimately what we're here to help you to connect to, is the truth of who you are. And that's just one aspect of that. Now, the other way, if you were looking for something, we're just going to go back to the needle on the carpet again. And this analogy is kind of twisting and changing. So just go with it. If it sounds contradictory or anything like that, just trust with it and go for it for a moment. If we're looking for something on the floor and then all of a sudden there's, excuse me, there's a rug or something over the needle, then there's obstructions in the way from us finding what we're looking for. A better analogy, this would actually be better. So that we're actually looking for that tapestry, not the needle. We're looking for the tapestry on the floor. And then there's kind of like jackets or other things, there's crumbs and other things in the way. So the healing of trauma is then us moving out all the things which are preventing us from recognizing the truth of who we are. So it could be limiting beliefs, addiction, PTSD, stress, anxiety, trauma, abuse, war, violence, karmic trauma, ancestral trauma, all of these different blockages. So those are kind of like being cleaned up, hoovered up out the way through these experiences. So what's left when you move through that process is just that infinite one consciousness. Another way to look at that is unconditional love. So you're already free, you're already unconditionally loving, you're already true, you're already connected, you're already spiritual, you're already healed. But what might be in the way is something that's preventing you from seeing that. Just like if you were putting do you remember those old projector slides where you would put like a camera projector and you put it in, a light would go through it, and then you would see that on the screen. And if there's some dirt on that lens, then that picture will be a little bit misty or not as sharp as it wants to be. So that's what trauma can be like. It's like dust on the lens of our life. So the healing of trauma can be like healing the dust upon the lens. These can be imprinted, and these can be known as trauma imprints. So if something happened to us, a child, like in my own experience of being ritually abused, violently sexually abused, that leaves an imprint upon the experience of my life. And I'll just speak directly from my own experience, which was then heavily addicted to drugs, wanted to kill myself before many times, didn't think I would ever make it to 30, had very much difficulty holding down any relationship. The relationships that I were in were really, really just toxic. Again, there was still a lot of love there, but it was very much from a cup empty, not overflowing place, really needing, really, really suffering, and just feeling completely separate from everything. I understand now that there's been many carryovers from many other lifetimes, which are karmic imprints upon my being, again, on the lens, karmically imprinted. And then through experiencing what I've experienced in this lifetime, being able to clean, it's like sucking that up like a vacuum, being able to clean that lens. So as we take that transition into more heart open, conscious living, that no longer needs to be experienced. So the benefit of healing trauma and how ayahuasca can really help us do this is that it enables us to remove, heal, transform traumatic imprints on our being that may have occurred in this lifetime or multi-dimensional lifetimes in other lifetimes. And then we're able to heal that so we can experience more joy, compassion, happiness, love in our life. So I went from living in the UK and in Germany, heavily addicted to drugs, living in the rat race, working, being somewhat successful, functioning addict, but not really being happy and being inebriated pretty much every day, whether it be after work or the weekends, partying, all these types of things. Now, after going through this deep healing and evolution with plant medicines and alternative healing modalities and trauma-informed care, I now live my life that I love, happily married with the most beautiful woman in the world, Jamie, happily married and running our business together, Casa Galactica. We actually, by a byproduct, I don't know how this happened, but we ended up starting our company on the 14th of February. And we say to each other that this is our love letter to each other in service to others. Get to be on podcasts with yourself, talk about this type of work, share consciousness expansion, and work with people from all over the world, helping them heal and evolve, while simultaneously learning more about the universe, learning more about conscious expansion, doing our best to embody that and living this life that's really full of joy here in Pisac and the Andean Mountains. The reason that I'm here able to do this is what I would describe as that I am a dedicated inner truth seeker. There's so many different ways, parts along the way that I could have stopped, that I could have turned around. So ayahuasca is a big catalyst because it dissolves the veil of illusion for you to be able to heal, see repressed trauma, be able to recognize that, to be able to release that. Whilst you're in an ayahuasca ceremony, we shamanically hold the space, singing healing songs and icaros, which are different energetic transmissions and vibrations to firstly hold a safe space, then also to help you transform energetic blockages so that you no longer need to hold on to them. When you drink ayahuasca, when these healing processes are occurring, there's a whole set of symptoms known as purging, which is kind of the famous symptoms of ayahuasca, which is then throwing up, vomiting. There can be shakes, there can be sweating, there can be trauma somatically leaving the body, there can be diarrhea, there can be sadness, there can be elation and joy. And this all leaving the body, leaving the being, the trauma imprints, leaving the lens, so that then what comes through the lens is that brilliant projection of the one infinite creation, that true infinite light and joy, which then can manifest through you as the infinite divine creator and creation, expressing its divine soul print in service to others. So as we go through those experiences in ayahuasca, there's a big stripping away of all those things, those traumas that no longer serve us. And that sometimes can be tough because we see things that we did that were out of alignment. We can see things where we were perhaps did things that were not in alignment, or for instance, someone might have stole something or been bullied or hit someone or done something or been violent, or also on the other side of things, been abused, been in a car crash, been whatever it may be. There's what you can go back to those events and situations from that perspective of unconditional love and heal and transform it with the help of the plant doctors, with the help of ayahuasca, with the help of Noya Rao, with the help of Blue Lotus, with the Hell Yourself, Kuan Yin, all of the angels and guides, all these different beings that are present there, and you can transform that. And on the other side of it, then there's the recognition of yourself as that infinite creator and creation, where you are no longer subject to the limitations of feeling like you're a finite being in a finite body. You're experiencing yourself through this creation, learning to recognize yourself as the infinite creation. And through that powerful transformation, you can then heal and evolve. And then we have a whole integration program that takes you back, that transforms plant medicine experiences into life transformation, so that you can anchor that wisdom, anchor that knowledge, and make real profound change in your work, your life, your relationships, your eating habits, your health, and then begin to really thrive, move from that survival mode to absolutely thriving and sharing that love with the world.
Oh, so powerful. I think we're listening to a lot of things you were talking about with your own story, what really was hitting me, when it comes to trauma, there are a lot of these unconscious, I guess, symptoms, you could say, like, for example, drinking and doing drugs and, negative relationships, and they can cause those are like symptoms. And a lot of times, maybe we aren't aware of our traumas, but we're having these symptoms of traumas. So it sounds like ayahuasca really kind of like you said, it's the clothes on the floor covering the tapestry. So it really brings those into kind of focus and makes us aware of the traumas that are there that we might not have been aware of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that really is it. Because for me, I drank ayahuasca because I heard that it was going to help me with addiction. I didn't know about any of this trauma that I'd experienced. I was running my own business. I was running my own business, a renewable energy recruitment company that we just started. My business partners, things were actually better than ever in terms of being free. We're actually working. It was actually conscious. We were giving money back to charity. It felt really good. And I was just like, yeah, I'm on my path. There's no way I'm changed. And then I kind of did it. And I'm like, oh, business partners, I'm sorry. This is not my life. And I kind of went through this whole process of going through drinking ayahuasca at a couple of retreats, going to India, going to Nepal, studying these different spiritual traditions, and then coming here to the Amazon rainforest. And then that's when I started to go into the Shipibo tradition, because I knew that I wanted to work with ayahuasca, and I'd heard that would be the best way to go to the Amazon rainforest, right into the heart of it. And then this whole kind of transformation occurred through being able to study and apprentice here in that way. But yes, there's many people, the way people that can kind of come to us to drink ayahuasca, there's some people who are just kind of like, I've heard about ayahuasca. Like, I know that this is going to be really good for me. I've had some friends about it. I've listened to some podcasts. It makes sense. This is really for me. And I'm ready to kind of do that. And that's great. And then there's some other people who kind of just have like the symptoms of separation, what I describe them as, which is the anxiety, the trauma, the PTSD, the stress. And perhaps they've tried different alternative healing modalities, or perhaps they've tried more kind of traditional kind of what I would say, like, or antidepressants in this way, or other things, or pharmaceuticals, or other things that doctors have prescribed, and they might have just like taken the symptoms away for a little bit, but then your dosages have to go up. It's not treating the root cause, so it's never going to go away. So plant medicines treat the root cause, and we get many people who come to us who really are just kind of, I would just say, very much at the end of their struggle, in terms of that they can't really take much more, that they're really bottoming out. And the work that we do was very much focused on trauma-informed care, with a perspective of empowerment to teach people about consciousness, to connect with spirit, to connect to that infinite one consciousness that we've been discussing about. We're going to dive a little bit more into the trauma side of things now, and the excavating of that trauma, because not all places are necessarily, I would say, beneficial for people to go and drink ayahuasca at, if they have a history of trauma, because you may be in a setting with large ceremonies with people who are not necessarily trauma informed. And when you're kind of going into this realm for a spiritual experience, many people sometimes go into this ayahuasca realm looking for this spiritual experience, but what they come out with is a recognition of repressed trauma that they just had no idea about. And it kind of comes up, and then it's like, oh my gosh, how do I deal with that?
Right.
That can be re-traumatizing if you're not in the right setting. That can be re-traumatizing if you're not able to be held, to be able to process, to be able to integrate that, to be able to shift that through, because there's a lot of darkness, there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of guilt, there's a lot of sadness that can come up. It can be overwhelming. And even if it comes up in the ayahuasca ceremony, it can take some time to integrate that, especially if perhaps you've had a recognition of something that you were unaware of, or a recognition or a big change and transformation in your being. So yeah, it can bring the unconscious up. So part of the trauma-informed care is that we recognize that everyone on some level may have experienced trauma. So we treat people in a way that means that you're safely and with a lot of integrity held through a process that, should something arise, it doesn't have to, but should it arise, you're already being treated in a way that's going to hold you safely through a lot of compassion, care, understanding, and trauma-informed care that's going to enable you to reprogram your experience. So when I talk about reprogramming your experience, we hear maybe potentially about ayahuasca rewiring your brain, rewiring your experience, reprogramming your being. Now, one of the most powerful ways that this can happen is we can go into perhaps some deep traumatic experiences. A car crash. I feel like someone might have been listening who's had a car crash, and just that goes up. They've had a car crash, and I'm just going to talk about this, just like a little trigger warning of just a car crash. Just going through, perhaps the car's hitting the tree, and then there's the kind of the injuries that occur to the body, and they get stored deep within the body, and there's kind of just this feeling of just like being a little bit traumatized in the body, like the physical trauma, and then going to the hospital, going through the rehabilitation process 3-6 months, and then kind of coming back and be like, thank God I walked away from this, there's no real serious injuries. But what remains is the impact, is the impact of hitting that tree, the impact of the shock, the impact of the head hitting the steering wheel, the absolute fear of dying. Am I going to make this? What's happened? Just kind of waking up in that car wreck and being like, oh my God, what's there? So in this experience, especially when one's gone unconscious and perhaps blacks out from that experience, which can be known as dissociation. And we're talking about this from the level of a car crash experience, but this can also be from sexual abuse, from rape, from childhood memories, from physical abuse, many other things. But we're going to keep talking about this from the car crash perspective, that on that point of going unconscious or dissociating from the body, there's an experience that is recorded by the body, which is like a black box recorder from a flight, which records everything that's happened. But because we've not had the conscious awareness of that or the ability to do that, just like as Peter Levine says from somatic experiencing, that if you watch animals in the wild when they're chased, that then once the chase experience or they've been hunted experience, they release that trauma from the body immediately and they no longer carry it around with them. Yet as humans, we don't quite do that so well. So that gets stored in the body. So something like an ayahuasca experience, talking to this car crash experience, enables you to go back to that experience to perhaps feel the level of fear that comes up as you're kind of just hitting that tree. And then it can be scary as that comes up, and it can leave the body. Plant spirits, we're here holding the space, singing Icaros, also helping you, coaching through that process, holding your hand if it needs be, taking you to the bathroom, helping you walk over to the bathroom, and then letting you go to the bathroom and just waiting outside the door for you until you're able to come back. So whatever it is that you're going through, we hold you through that process. And then that's able to then leave the body, so that you don't then need to then experience that fear every time you get back on a highway again. Someone who's like gone in the car is like, oh my gosh, am I going to crash? That leaves the body, so it's no longer there. So it reduces it. Now we can talk about this from a level of trauma, and that there might be some shame, might be guilt, there might be something of an addiction that comes up, or things in the past, or unsafe or promiscuous situations, or whatever it may be, that we kind of just beat that back down in the subconscious. So we're able to allow that to come up to the surface, to be able to be healed, to be transformed. And the more that you're able to surrender to that process, the more that you're able to trust in that process, the more that you're able to let go through that process, have less resistance, it's able to move through and wash through you. Just like, for instance, if you have an illness at some point, like say, for instance, you have a food poisoning or something like that, and it just goes through you for 48 hours. It goes through you for 48. There's nothing you can do. Where you might have difficulties if you're just kind of like, I'm just going to keep doing my thing. I'm just going to keep going. I'm not ill. I'm just going to keep going. Whereas if you kind of rested, you drank your teas, you stayed in bed, you watched Netflix, and you did whatever you needed to do to look after yourself, ultimately that's going to be an easier way to go through that process, rather than resisting and saying, I have to still be productive. So as these things come up, we coach you through this process. This is why we have a full preparation package. It's why we have orientation. It's why we have so many workshops, one-on-one care, attention, plus a full integration package after the retreats. We're able to coach you through this process so that you're able to move through these deep levels of shame, trauma, guilt, PTSD, anxiety, whether it be in a war, whether it be in a violent situation or abuse. And you're able to allow that to be transformed in a way that moves through so somatically, so directly, so viscerally, that you can re-experience this pain as it comes through. And I'm not saying this to scare people. It's not always like this, but it can be like this. But those processes that you go through in this experience, you come out on the other side of it. And for the most part, it can even be the same evening or a couple of hours later, and you just feel, whoa, I'm free. I feel like I'm free from that. But whilst you're in that process, it can feel like it's like, okay, is this ever going to, it's very difficult. How long is this going to go on for? This is why we're here for you. This is why we have trauma-informed care. This is why we're able to support you through this process. This is why we do podcasts such as this, telling people about what ayahuasca is like. We don't try and sugarcoat it, although it's very, very transformational. And if one of you is feeling called to do that, we also offer 30-minute free consultations that you can contact contact us via our website at casagalactica.com. We can talk through your own personal fears, your own personal experiences, and we'll help you to kind of see if this is the right medicine for you and working with us in this way.
That is so helpful to have that, because I think that it's, like you said, it is a big deal. And I'm so glad that thank you for going into detail about the trauma-informed care part, because I feel like that's not spoken about enough. And I think, it's so important to have that aspect when you explain everything, how these things can come up and these traumas, maybe we don't know we have a trauma and we realize it during, the ceremonies, and they come up, to have somebody there that has that trauma-informed care capability. That is like a vital part of, choosing the proper place and the proper, setting to do so. And the other thing I found interesting when, looking over your website and doing a lot of research, was I didn't realize there was such a preparation. I don't know if every place that does ayahuasca ceremonies have this, but the preparation in advance, I thought was really fascinating, because there's like a special diet. It's kind of like a mind, body, soul kind of diet cleansing in preparation for it, which I never knew about.
Yeah, well, we're very thorough. We're two Capricorns who have gone through a lot of trauma, and we are very thorough in helping to prepare people for the transformation of your life. So when you just think about, I'm going to go and transform my life, there's going to be some preparation involved like that. Like someone just goes, oh yeah, I just decided I'm running the marathon tomorrow. I'm just going to show up. Okay, that's not going to go so well.
Right.
So the more preparation that we provide, we find that is very beneficial. That's part of the trauma-informed care, is about being very transparent, about providing informed consent, about collaborating with people in the process of preparation, basically saying, hey, these medications that you're taking are contraindicated. If you want to come to the ayahuasca retreat, if you want to do that, you're going to have to stop these medications for a period of time. Speak to your doctor about this. See how you feel about it. Once you spoke to your doctor, once you spoke to us about what the retreat is, and once you've checked it out, you can make a decision if this is right for you. We're not here to sell these retreats to anyone. We're here to provide information to allow people to make their own choices. And that's such a big, important part of trauma-informed care, which is when you come on a retreat, you never have to join all the ayahuasca ceremonies. You don't have to take all the additional plant medicines. You can drink as much or as little as you want. You're in control of your process. We're here to facilitate and to make sure that we guide you safely through that process, and then we give as much choice through that process as we can to you within the realms of safety. So the preparation process is a really big part of that, because it is a commitment to come and do this work. We're in Peru. You're going to be coming overseas. You're going to be coming and staying with us at our center for at least 10 days. A lot of people do decide to stay longer and come and see Machu Picchu and all the other things that we've got in this beautiful region. But you're making a commitment. So we want to give you all the information that you've got, all the preparation that you can, so that by the time that you get here, you've already been training for that marathon. You've already been training for that experience, so that when you're in that process, you already kind of know what to do. This is why when you join as well, we give you one of the workshops that I did online as part of my online healing and evolution workshop series, which is a 5-hour fundamental of trauma healing workshop, which takes you through the process of being able to transform trauma, how to sit with trauma, how to ground, how to do all these different types of things. So the training starts when you book. And we have a one-on-one preparation session with us as well as a lot of written documentations about what to expect. And we're available on hand if you have additional questions. This really enables you to be at the optimum peak performance for your ayahuasca journey. And this just really makes it an even more transformational experience. And a lot of people do work through a lot of the fears and anxieties that come up before they get to us, because we're here to support you every step of the way. And I really think that goes a long way when people are making these decisions, because for you to go and choose an ayahuasca retreat center wherever it is, it's important that you trust that these people have your best interests at heart, that they're able to provide everything that you need, and also that they're resonant with you, that they think these are the type of people, this is the way that this teaching comes through. So just like if you were going to a church and we're not a church, but if you go into a church, you'd have to resonate with the pastor and the way that he was saying these different types of things.
Right.
If you were going to a yoga class, you'd have to resonate with the way that the yoga teacher was working. And then if you were going to a specialist for some kind of healing process or operation or something like that, you would speak with the doctors, you would speak with the different clinics, and you'd be like, okay, I've read all the information. Because of X, Y, and Z, I can see that they don't only say it, they live, breathe, and walk all of this. I can trust them. And that's where it's important for you to make your own decision. Is this the type of place that I can go to have this experience where I can bare my soul and be held through that process? So that's a big commitment. That's a big commitment for people to make. And we only ask people to take that level of trust at the level that you feel comfortable. Yet we encourage, through inviting the process of surrender, through gained trust throughout the experience, that enables you to be held.
Got it. Yeah, I appreciate you outlining, kind of important criteria to look for, because, I think, like you said, it's such a big life shift. I mean, you're changing your life, you're bringing up, kind of removing these traumas. So it's really important to know kind of what to look for, and, where you're kind of, what the thought process is when approaching this. Now, you touched a little bit on this earlier, but so after the ayahuasca retreats, after the ceremonies, and we go back to kind of our everyday life, what kind of outcomes or effects have you seen kind of in yourself or others after these healing ceremonies and the retreats you hold?
Yeah, great question. So the first thing I want to just say as well, just through the ayahuasca retreat process, we're on site the whole time. So the center is about 50 meters away from our house. Everyone has walkie-talkies in the room. So if you're in a process in the evening or in the night when everyone's gone to bed, you can contact us, you can wake us up. But after the ceremony, we have a situation where we check in with everyone. We stay in the ceremony space until everyone's grounded. We'll work with people. We'll talk, we'll process, we'll integrate. We'll have some soup, we have some tea. We talk and make sure everyone's in that kind of safe space to kind of be grounded. So you're not left through that process. And ultimately, if someone needed to stay with us there for 3 or 4 hours after the ceremony, we would be there. We were here in service for you. Unfortunately, that's very rarely the case. But in any situation where anyone is feeling that they need that extra care and support, we're here for you. We're here for you for the entire retreat. We're here for you before the retreat. We're here for you after the retreat. So the type of experiences that people can have following a retreat, following an ayahuasca experience, is less fear, living for more love, heart open, synchronicities that occur in life that then the physical reality begins to reflect that change that you've done. So how this works metaphysically is you go into that retreat setting, and again, we talk about the retreat as 10 days, but the retreat is when you start booking, you go through this whole process with this whole preparation process with us, and then a whole integration process on the other side. But when you begin that retreat, you undergo metaphysical metamorphosis. And as you go through that metamorphosis on a mental, emotional, and spiritual, and even physical level, then what happens is that vibration, as we talked about before, about the lens on that projector screen, that lens is now clearer. So that when you come out and you come home, then things in your life are now begun to experience through that clearer lens. There's just a clarity that can be there. Like, problems can be easier to solve. Trauma that used to be there, that used to affect you from making decisions, or kind of like, I'm going to go on that date, or I'm going to go for that job, or I'm going to move location, or I'm going to go on that holiday, or whatever it might be. And you don't need to do any of these things. But then you're able to make that choice with freedom from a recognition of that's what you truly want. So you're able to see yourself more clearly. If you're able to see yourself more clearly, there's thus and therefore more awareness. And then you're able to then choose more consciously about what and who you want to experience in whatever way. Now, we've had different experiences of people with chronic pain just being able to walk away without chronic pain. People have had crutches in one sense and experience. An old guy was kind of in his 70s and working with plant medicines, Chirix Henango, which we provide in our retreat, was able to then heal chronic physical pain. We've had people who've had deep levels of addiction, very deep levels of addiction, that have kind of just come out of that experience and then just been like, wow, I don't need to smoke marijuana anymore. Wow, I don't need to do that anymore. And we've had different levels of experience where people have worked with us through the process, the whole process of being in deep levels of PTSD, anxiety states, taking antidepressants, not necessarily being able to leave the house and interact, through working with us through our online sessions, because I have a whole host of online trauma healing sessions that I work with people as well, either sometimes in additional preparation for retreats or just as standalone work, which is very, very powerful transmissions of this multi-dimension, of all the stuff I'm talking about, from all my awarenesses of all these connections. This is just a transmission of this over Zoom. And through working through with people through these processes and coming to the retreats, I just say the words of being, not having social anxiety, not being suicidal, for the first time, feeling like things are going to work out. So there's just so many different ways that can happen, but it's not necessarily linear. Sometimes when you come back home, sometimes you have to face a little bit more of that shadow through that integration process, as it kind of just comes up one more time for you to choose something different. So there's a whole integration process. You can check out the integration document that on webpage on our website, where I go into this in more detail. I won't go into it into depth now, but there's different situations that can arise in your integration, that when you make a powerful choice, just for instance, if someone was addicted to drinking, and then when they come home through this process, they've already healed so many different layers of whatever it may be at the core trauma underneath the addiction, then they find themselves in a situation where they're being tempted to drink, and it's a very tough decision, but then one says no. And then there's the power in that choice, because the plant medicine is not a silver bullet. It's not going to change everything. You have to bring your part to that. So the integration process, and we coach you through all of this, how you can transform these plant medicine experiences into lifelong changes, how you can anchor in that new vibration, how you can begin to live from that sense of freedom that you've found and acknowledged. That's really when it gets really exciting, because you start living more in alignment. You start to know more clearly who you are. So then you can see, just like we talked about before, when you put the two colors up against one another, it's like, I don't like that one. It's easy. I can see it. This is what I prefer. So then you can just start to see all those things that are out of alignment in your life. And this is where the challenge can come, because then you have a choice. Am I going to continue to be out of alignment, even though I know better? Or am I going to choose something more? Choose what I truly deserve. And that's where the magic happens.
Beautiful. So there is a specific, and I'll find that on your site, and I'll post a link that below, because I think it's so important. There's a preparation process, and then there's the actual retreat, and then there is an after the retreat integration process.
Yes.
So yeah, I think that's key, because I think, for me, it's like I do spirituality to be a rock star in 3D life. Like how does it transfer into living this physical dimension better, and that's, I haven't heard much about integration process. So I'm definitely going to go check that, and I'll post that below, because I think it's really, really important. You work with other types of plant medicines that are not just ayahuasca. What are some of the other types of plant medicines you work with, and what are some of the benefits and healing properties of those?
Yeah, great. I'll talk a little bit about that now, but I also just want to say, as part of the integration process, because it's not on our website yet, but we're starting in the next 4 weeks or so, we're going to be doing our monthly online integration sharing circles that everyone can join to for free. So this is, even if you've worked with us or not, whether you've worked with plant medicines or other healing modalities, then you can join our mailing list on our website, and you'll get more information about that. But we also have this ongoing free monthly integration circle. After we have the one-on-one integration session with you, you're invited to continue to join with us as part of our community. So we really believe that, like, I like what you said there, doing that spiritual work to be a rock star in the 3D, we want to facilitators for that, for helping you really make and affect changes that are substantial and meaningful in your day-to-day life, not just when you're on a retreat, not just when you're meditating, not just when you're doing yoga. It's like, how do I show up differently for myself, for my community, for my family, for myself? It's just, so yeah, we're really all about that, and happy to talk more about that with anyone.
Yeah. And how do you kind of transfer the lessons you learned from ayahuasca and those experiences and solidify them into your life? How do you kind of And it sounds like there is a specific there are specific guidelines that you guys work with and tools you work with to help the people that go through your process do so.
I mean, this is how we live our lives, and this is what we do day in and day out. And we love to share this with everyone. It continues to evolve. And the more and more work we do for ourselves, the more and more work we do for others. So yeah, it's really what it's all about, is how do we bring that home? Because, if you're just going out to space and you're just like, oh, I had a nice holiday, and you don't bring anything back, what's changed? You just have a postcard. That's it.
Absolutely.
So the other plant medicines, we work with 8+ different plant medicines on our retreats. And these are not psychoactive plant medicines. So we're not trying to fit in all of the different psychoactive plant medicines and entheogens here to blast everyone off to Mars and not come back. We work with ayahuasca as the psychedelic medicine, but part of the plant spirit healing tradition is that the curanderos, which is a Spanish word for healer, or it's synonymous with shaman, but we don't really use that word. So the curandero, which I would call myself as a curandero or a ceremony leader, whilst we're in the ceremony space, there is a diagnosis which occurs for different mental, emotional, and spiritual illnesses and conditions, which then additional plant treatments are then able to prescribe in a way that help to transform that. Now, we do have a personalized program available for people. So should someone be coming with a illness or trauma, yet we've created a generalized treatment plan of additional plant medicines, which can really, really help people for a whole host of mental, emotional, and psychological, spiritual, and physical conditions. So I'll talk a little bit about some of those. We have saunas or vapor baths, which are personalized saunas where you have different plants, which we have here, eucalyptus leaves, pine leaves, juniper, and they go into a pot with many prayers and different intentions in there as it's made. Again, connecting to the multidimensional aspects of the plants, what we were talking about before. And you go into this container, which is kind of just like a sheet that goes over you. And we're there supporting you through this process. And you go down in there for as long as you want, breathing in the vapors. So it's a personalized plant pot vapor bath sauna, which then transforms negative thoughts, stress, anxiety, heavy metals in the body, cleans the blood, and negative energies or kind of like trapped trauma energies. It really helps to kind of like dislodge those. So you're breathing it in, and so much light that comes in through those plants. It goes through your lungs, through your skin, and you kind of stay in there. Some people stay in there for like kind of 5 to 10 minutes, and it can be quite intense. But it's just, again, you do it at your own pace. We're there. We coach you through the whole process. It's beautiful. You kind of come out on the other side feeling very, very clean, very, very liberated. And we have other plants known as Tansi Rao, which is specifically for working for people with trauma. Now, it's a plant. It's a sensitiva plant. It's a sensitiva mimosa. And it's a plant that you might have seen, and it grows in different places around the world. But when you touch it, the leaves all kind of, they close up. Have you seen these types of plants?
I think so, yes.
Yeah. And then when they leave them alone,
I mean, it's like I guess it reminds me of a Venus flytrap almost. If you like,
kind of not so aggressive.
Okay. It doesn't like it doesn't eat things.
No, the leaves just curl up. The leaves just curl up, and it's very sensitive. So the way that this plant is very sensitive, and this kind of the signature of plants, where you can see how they physically manifest, how the plants physically manifest is a direct way of you seeing what the kind of metaphysical properties of those plants are like. Because this plant is very sensitive, it helps people with trauma. So these plants will then work with you in your dream space as well as cleaning the mental, the emotional, spiritual, and physical body. Then we have different plant medicines which are there to help clean the nerve system, clean the blood, the kidneys, and work with the memory and work with the brain. So we have different plant medicines which are based upon Pinon Colorado. We also have Chiricsanango, which is also great for arthritis and pain in the physical body. So we prescribe these alongside the retreat, as part of the retreat, as alongside the ayahuasca, I should say. And they're an integral part. We also have a digestive cleanse, a stomach cleanse as well. All these medicines are optional. You can do as many or as little of them as you want. And sometimes we have different medicines that arise, which we feel are specifically for some person who's coming with X issue or Lyme disease or this, that, the other, then we might have some more kind of intense plant medicines available for people who perhaps want to start to heal the root cause of this. Now, what the whole holistic approach of what we're doing here with the ayahuasca ceremony, as I mentioned, that in the ayahuasca ceremony, there's a lot of healing that's done through connecting the patients traditionally, or what we used to call the participants, with spirit, so that metaphysically, the alkaloids of the plants that are being ingested, there's this whole holistic healing process which occurs. And then throughout that process, we're able to also teach you how to communicate with these plants so that you can then start recognizing how you can communicate with these plants that you're ingesting, so that you can then start learning how to communicate with plants at home, so that you can start recognizing yourself as a metaphysical being. So we start to try and incorporate all of these teachings as you're taking these plant medicines. So it really is a multidimensional way of healing, because you're not just taking a plant, you're learning to connect to the spirit, you're learning to connect to yourself, you're learning to become your own healer and learn how the plants can then talk to you. So we provide all of these different plant medicines as part of the retreat. And you can find more about that on our website at casagalactica.com.
Beautiful. And as far as the plant medicine healing, outside of the ayahuasca, all the beautiful different types you were talking about, can you do those via Zoom, or, you know, if somebody came to you in that matter, it wasn't actually physically there, is that something that somebody could do a session and kind of, you could, you know, learn more about that specific area?
Yes. So I'll just give a disclaimer that any plant medicines or anything that I would then say to people in our online sessions and say, hey, you should try this plant medicine at home. This is spiritual information and guidance. I'm not a doctor. So I just want to put a disclaimer in there. I have a lot of experience of taking these plant medicines myself and have had great benefits, and I've always advised people to do your own research. Anything that I say and share in any of our work here at Casa Galactica, we always say, take what resonates with you. Remember, you're your own healer. Leave everything to the wayside that doesn't resonate for you. And perhaps a seed is planted and allow that to grow. So when people work with me on their online trauma healing sessions or channeling sessions, yes, if people have an interest of connecting with different plants, if people have an interest in learning how to communicate with plant spirits, have my own Learn to Channel course as well. Jamie has an intuitive mentorship course where we teach people how to connect metaphysically and multidimensionally, communicate with spirit. Everybody can do this. There's nothing special about Jamie and I, other than what I would say is that we're dedicated inner truth seekers. In other words, we put the time, the hours, and the dedication, and we really believe in this path which we're on. So everybody who finds that dedication is able to connect. There's no prerequisites. Just the fact that you're here and you exist means that you're able to connect multidimensionally. It is the very truth of who you are.
Yeah, and you that's one of your powerful tools that you utilize, is channeling and connecting to multi-dimensional guides. And you, like you said, you teach it, and you also teach how to activate your intuition or higher self. Could you kind of talk us through some kind of maybe first steps to connecting with our guides or their light beings to channel their wisdom, for those that don't have any sort of background or understanding of it?
Absolutely. So I know I've already referred everyone back to our website a few times, but there's so much stuff on there. It's a labor of love for us. So I can just get you there and you can keep the learning on there. So 2 things. Firstly, go to our website, sign up to our newsletter, because then you're going to get a beginner's guidebook to strengthening your intuition direct into your inbox, written by Jamie, who's an amazing intuitive medium. And that's step-by-step process that you can just start integrating straight away. In addition to that, just so you know as well, you'll also get that Fundamentals of Healing Trauma workshop, the 5-hour workshop that I mentioned before as well, plus 20% off your first online session with us. So just go to our website, check that out. Secondly, go to our growth portal, which is where we have podcasts such as these. And if you go down to the bottom, you'll also find a meditation that's completely free there that helps you to connect to plant spirits. So you can just get next to a plant, play the meditation, go through that process, and you can start connecting directly to plants there. These are all completely free, nothing cost. It's our gift to you. So I just invite you to go and check that out.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And do you want to just, tell us where we can all find you, what your website is, and if there's any other, types of programs or information that you haven't mentioned yet, that you have available? Do you want to talk about that now?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So yeah, you can just go to our website, which is casagalactica.com. You won't find us on social media. We've not been on social media for a few years now. So we put everything on our website. This is the hub for all of the teaching and the learning. Please go and check out our Ayahuasca Healing and Evolution retreats. It's got so much more information and in depth about what the program is, what's contained, our upcoming dates, which start from September this year. So check out, we've got retreats through September through March at the moment this year, and they're only limited to 4 people. So please feel free to look through our website and then get in touch for that 30-minute free consultation. There's many different ways you can contact with us. So just check out our website. If you have any more information, please feel free to reach out to us via our website and we'll be in touch. And yeah, thank you all for listening. And thank you, Christy. It's been an absolute pleasure. Really looking forward to share this with our audience. It's really, really beautiful. A great conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been, and don't forget also they do that free consultation if you want to learn more and see if this ayahuasca is right for you, that he mentioned earlier in the show. And I'll post links below to your website. Before we wrap it up today, do you have any final thoughts or words for those who have gone through a trauma or are looking for a path to healing, or maybe looking to transform their life in some way currently?
Absolutely. Firstly, I am a big advocate of the work that we do and the way that we do this work, and know that there's a great level of benefit, whether it be working with us online or coming to our ayahuasca retreats. But you don't have to be connecting with us to be able to do this. So the reason I'm saying this is just begin to ask for help, begin to find help. There's so many different free resources, whether it be a support group, a spiritual book, a YouTube channel, a podcast such as this. There's so many different resources there. Just whatever you're going through, just pause for 1 second and just know that there's help available. Just breathe into that for 2 to 5 seconds. Just say, there is help available. You might not know where that is. It might not be so apparent right now, but just when you go into on our website, on the integration website as well, we've got a whole list of different support groups for people who go through abuse and things like that. So there's just wherever you are, there's online support groups, there's different ways that you can connect with people. So just know that there's help available, and just breathe into that one more time. It's like, okay, I have help available. It doesn't matter what help it is, but just breathe into that and just recognize that and just know I have help available. And then begin to choose what vibration of help, what level of help that you feel is beneficial for you. I'm a big proponent of trauma-informed care. I've worked with great trauma therapists in my life and very much informed the way that I work with people in healing trauma. You don't have to come to Peru to heal yourself. We have a whole host and different bunches of ways that you can connect with us. So just know that help is available, and just breathe into that one more time. I am supported, and just let all of the limiting beliefs that are there that want to tell you that you're on your own, that there's no help available, that I'm doomed. It's okay. It's okay that you feel like that. There's a reason that you feel like that. It's because you've probably got some trauma or PTSD and you've been facing this on your own. But the time now is to know that help is here.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your wisdom on plant medicine and, all things energy and healing and your journey. And thank you so much for all the important work that you both are doing to help others heal as well and deeply transform.
Thanks so much, Christy. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I really look forward to connecting with more of you soon. Thanks so much.
Remember, knowledge is power. The more you understand about your body, the better you're able to stay healthy and prevent disease. And a reminder, I'm not your doctor, so please don't take this as medical advice. If you have specific questions about your healthcare, feel free to reach out to your practitioner. And if you like this video, please like and share with others. This information could really help someone you may know. And hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, to be sure you don't miss out on our future shows. And I will see you all next Wednesday on the next episode of Discovering True Health.